Hi, my name is Christy Burns,
And I'm Melissa Walsh,
and you are tuning into Sis Let's Talk Leadership,
where we unmask the myths.
and we own the journey.
Hi,
So,
Christy.
hi, Melissa. We were having a in-depth conversation, and it went into resilience. And I was about to give an example of how I had a conversation with a student yesterday and an actual new employee today, so a new hire. And
Oh,
in the midst of having this conversation, I was just letting them know that you have to keep going no matter what. But it was another point that I was referencing in that. Remind me what you said prior to me making that statement. Do you remember what you actually said?
so I think what we were talking about was we were going towards the path of resilience is such a loosely used word nowadays that I think, we went through the pandemic, which we never want to talk anymore because I think we talk so much about it. And there was so much conversation about we have to be resilient. Thank you for your resiliency. We appreciate your resiliency. And I think what we forget often is what resiliency actually means and how it can be defined slightly differently for everyone. So, for example, I dove deep into it. To me, being told I'm resilient is a bit of a trigger word because I know I am, but what choice did we have? Like when we're in leadership, we don't really have a choice but to be resilient, especially when you are as invested as you and I are in our career, in building other people up, in making sure that we're appropriately representing our department, our profession, ourselves, our
Yeah.
other leaders in our team. So when I started to think about like resiliency, like what does it actually mean? Like I actually looked it up one day and I spent some time thinking about it because someone had said exactly that, like, oh my gosh, I appreciate your resilience through this situation. And I'm like, but I don't feel resilient. I feel stretched very far. I feel that my brain elasticity is
Mhm,
just going to give in
mhm.
and don't know that I will be able to appropriately respond to something and I won't be proud of the way that I handled it. So I really did this deep dive into what it means to me. And when I read more about it, it's talking about resilient has to do with how quickly you recover from a hard situation. And a lot of the times, if you think about it, we're not recovering through situations as leaders. We're moving through them. We're taking action through them. You're doing what you need to do to get to the other side. So I do wonder if when you were talking to those students, you were talking about like, hey, right now, learning is hard.
Yeah,
It's all new. And how
yeah,
do you through it, right? Like when you
yeah.
think of it from a student perspective.
And then they were explaining to me some of the challenges they've been dealing with from a personal standpoint. And I
Oh man.
basically was just letting them know that, you got to keep going. You got to figure out what that looks like for you. But then I also came from a spiritual perspective and told them that you have to
Oh,
know how to lean into God. And
mhm.
what I told them, which this word has come up in the past 3 days, that's what I was getting to, was
There you go.
sovereignty. And
Ooh,
so, sovereignty, by definition, same thing with resilience. Didn't quite know what it means, but it's one of those same words that you just
yeah.
hear all the time. You say it all the time. God is sovereign, God is sovereign. But what did it actually mean? So I went to
Yeah.
the myself and looked it up too. And it meant that he is in full control. So I
Mm,
was trying to let them know that even though you were going through things personally, you're still trying to make it through school. You have clinicals, extern, all these different things going on to totally put things in God's hands because he is
yeah.
sovereign. So if you believe that he's in control of everything, then you have to act accordingly.
Yeah.
So resilience kind of tied into that word of
Mhm.
not only, how you react after that challenge, which is what your definition states, but who am I tuning into to help support me in that, whether it's spiritual for some people or an actual physical person for some, some individuals. But knowing that God is sovereign for me was the advice that I gave to both of them
Mm,
in what that looked like. And it's just like how when you know that you have been assisted in challenges before, like
mhm.
over and over again, you know that the Lord brings you out. He's brought you through. But then when you go through the next challenge,
Mm.
it's like you get anxious, you get stressed. And this is what we were talking about today. It was with me, the clinical instructor, Patrice, and another student, but we were just talking about how everybody gets test anxiety, at least to some degree, but you know that you
Yeah.
studied everything for that test, right?
Uh,
And so when you get to the test, you get test anxiety. Well, it's the same thing when you come up to a new challenge and having to be resilient in it, where you
mhm.
may have prepared for it or the Lord has brought you through something over and over and over again. He's shown you that He's going to show up over and over again. But then when you get that that next challenge, you have faith
Mhm.
inside. And it's like, okay, what do I do? It's like, no, don't forget, pray. He's sovereign, he's in control. And and rephrase the narrative of what resilience looks like for
Mm.
you. And
Yeah.
so one of the what is it? Sermons that I was listening to not too long ago as well came from the aspect of knowing that he gets in the fire with us, that
Mhm.
yes, the fire may be created around us in order for us to have that resilience, but
Mhm.
he goes in the fire with us. So
Mhm.
he's not out there just chilling,
Mhm.
trying to figure out, well, are they going to come to me? How are they going to figure that out? He's in the fire with us. So
Mhm.
resilience, sovereignty, all these conversations literally have come up within the past 2 days. And it's not about worrying where someone is in their relationship with God. It's just putting the information out there to be of support and to let them know, hey, this
Mhm.
is kind of how I've dealt with it in times where I've had to be resilient, and maybe it'll work for you as well. So that's what I was going to say in reference to what that looks like. But yeah, conversation has come up twice in 2 days.
That's interesting. Can you you and I have a lot of side conversations, a lot of it via text message because it's usually the easiest for
Yeah,
us to converse through.
yeah.
But have you ever really thought about how okay, so like, were resilient, you leaned on your faith, right?
Mhm.
Um, and then sometimes part of your faith community is your friends, your go-to people, right? Because God gives you that community too to lean on. Have you ever recognized like your growth as a leader? Like you just explained you went through something. You went through a situation, you handled it a certain way, and then you learned from it. You came out on the other side, having handled it, you survived that fire. And then the next time another fire comes up. Have you ever recognized like the feeling is also different because you've learned from it, like you've self-reflected, where you're not starting from that anxiety you had the first time you went through that fire,
Yeah,
but you're starting from a different baseline? Do you
mhm,
ever feel like your baseline is shifting as a leader?
absolutely. This is really mind blowing because that came up as well. The
Oh,
actual
sweet.
physical feeling that you get
Mhm.
when you know that you can pass the test. When
Mhm.
you know that first of all, you're going to have the same test over and over again if you never pass it, whether
Yeah.
it is being patient, whether it is being resilient, since that's what we're speaking on, you're going to go through a cycle of going through the
Mhm.
same thing. You're like, oh my gosh, why does this keep happening? It's because you're not passing the test. So,
Mhm.
in that, when you know that you've passed the test, that feeling that you're referring to is what you feel. So you're
Mhm.
more relaxed, you're more at ease, the anxiousness doesn't come. You're relying on strength that is not coming from you, and your whole mindset has
Mhm.
shifted and how you're
Yeah.
perceiving that challenge as not necessarily a challenge, but you're trying to pull the positive out of it, which also helps you in
Yeah.
turn respond differently. So
Mhm.
yes, I can see the growth. I know that the growth is there. But what we also mentioned as well is that when you look back at those challenges, yes, they are hurtful, painful, every
Mhm.
negative word you can think of when you're going
Yeah.
through it. But then
Yeah.
when you pass the test and you get on the other side for the next challenge that is similar to that one, you can look back and say, hey, yeah, it didn't feel good when I went through it, but I absolutely needed to go through that. Because if I
For
didn't,
sure.
then I wouldn't be able to respond the way that I respond now. Absolutely, to answer your question, I do believe that you can feel the growth, you can see the growth, which allows you to respond differently in your growth.
What are some things that you feel that some tools in Christie's toolbox that you feel that you have created and hung onto over time to
Mhm.
make sure that you remember like the wins, the lessons that you learned from your last experience? Like last time I did this, and I'll start with an example for me. I've had to learn. I'll read something, especially like talk about like getting messages through either like Teams or an email. And someone just says something so left field that you can hear their tone. And then you realize that you added that tone. You added the tone to the message.
Yeah,
So I have had to take a second. I'll read something and I immediately have a feeling and I'm like, wait, hang on. I'm placing bias on that message. I'm putting a voice to that message because it fits my narrative, what I think that person's saying or doing or how they're doing it. Often when now I do, one of my tools is I remind myself like, okay, just look down for a second, look at something else. Look at something that makes you happy for a second, come back to it and read it factually.
Mhm.
Like if they say, "Hey, Melissa, you forgot to approve my PTO." I don't immediately think, "Oh, but I have like 5,000 other things that I've been doing and you have no idea the kind of morning I've had and now I have all this other stuff that I have to get done." Your PTO is not at the top of my list right now. I will get to it. And it's not for like another month. So it's really not that serious.
Mhm.
Now I look at it and I'm like, thank you so much for reminding me that I need to look at your PTO request to make sure I approve it. And it is so crazy the response that I get from that and the relationship that builds because I
Because of
didn't
it.
respond reactively, but
Mhm.
I took it at face value.
Mhm.
So I'm curious to know what tools, what Christy tools you have that have helped you to continue to maintain your resiliency, your bounce back from like stressful situations.
Yeah. This is something, and I'm by no means, perfect, and I'm still working on that. But what I
Yeah.
have set in place is I actually can pull it up right here. But what I have set in place is a notes section in my phone. And in my phone, I titled it Miracles and Revelations.
Wow.
And when I pull it up, I don't know if you can see that, probably not, but
Right.
okay, it's called Miracles and Revelations. And what I do is I date things, I write them down, and I state what was revealed to me in that moment and what was the outcome, because usually it's a positive outcome. So
Mhm.
when I go through something or I reach another challenge or another test
Yeah.
or another thing where maybe I'm in a cycle on something else that I'm working on or that the Lord's trying
Mhm.
to show me, I go back and I look at this and I'm like, if he did it then, if he showed
Mhm.
me this then, he's the same person. So he's going to show me over and over again. So I have it
Mhm.
dated here. I'd say, prayed and asked the Lord to perform miracles just as he did in the past and reminded him of what he's done. Surely he can fix it. Like literally, write it out. I write what the outcome was. And when I tell you it's from the small things to the big things, to
Mhm.
where it could be I'm riding down the road, realize I need gas, and he's like, I pull up to the gas station. Something in my spirit says, don't go to that pump. It doesn't work. And I'm like, no, I'm going to that pump because it's the closest pump and it's right there. And I'm in a hurry and I need to go. So I pull up to the pump, get out, put my card in, do all the things, right? Take the pump off,
Mhm.
go to pump it. It doesn't work. I'm like, and then I'm frustrated because now I just wasted my time. But had I
Mhm.
listened, then I probably wouldn't have been frustrated. So I say all that to say that I think that it is super important to be able to, if writing it down for you works, that's fine. But have
Mhm.
something that you can reference back to
Mhm.
show what you did and how you responded in the
Mhm.
past situations, how you
Mhm.
made it through, what the outcome was. So when you get in
Yeah.
a new situation, you can say, okay, this is what happened. And sometimes, like you said, you can take a pause. For you, it's looking down and doing whatever you need to do. And I know that may seem a little bit more tedious to kind of like open up your phone, do this and do that. But once
But
you
that's
read,
your process, right? Yeah.
and once you read them over and over again,
Yeah.
it starts to become like muscle memory. They're in my mind.
Yeah.
So now it makes it so much easier for me to respond because I'm like, wait a minute, what did he do for me? He just told me the other
Mhm.
day. He just did this the other day, or he just did this last week. And then
Mhm.
that helps me cope through or react and respond different to
Mhm.
whatever challenge that I may have. Yeah.
So interesting that you say that because I'm a huge Brené Brown fan. I very love how insightful her books are.
Yeah.
I love understanding the psychology and this kind of the social aspects of a lot of the things that we as humans do.
Yeah.
And one of the things that she was talking about recently, because she's marketing her new book, she
Mhm.
was talking about like how our brain, like we have to remap our brain to
Mhm.
think very differently,
Yeah.
especially when we have very high stress jobs where our brain may immediately want to go to the fight or flight mode, right? And I think about that quite often
Yeah.
since I listened to what she was talking about in an interview, and I was like, wow, that is so crazy because it's so true. And I believe that that's what you're doing. You're reframing, you're remapping the way that you're thinking because in that stressful moment, you're only thinking of how inconvenient something might be or how hard something might be, not thinking about the other times that things worked out the way that they were supposed to,
Yeah.
or things worked out for the greater good of the team or your patients
Mhm.
or for the greater good of what plans lay ahead for you. But I do love one of the things that you do that is probably by far one of my favorite things that you shared with me is you do some positive affirmations, which I
Yeah.
think is such a beautiful thing. And I recently told my husband, I was like, I give people so much grace And I often catch myself not giving myself that level of grace.
Yeah.
And I am so hard on myself. And you would think that because I give people so much grace and I'm like, that happens. Don't worry. We'll work through it. This doesn't define you. That I would very quickly also tell myself those things. But can you share a little bit more with me about how your journey with creating these positive affirmations for yourself as a leader started and what it's done for you?
It started after I went through my last big challenge in a leadership position where I allowed someone to define who I was, and I found myself not being the same person.
Mm,
That's the easiest way to describe it. So
yeah.
once I realized that, girl, this is not even you. You don't respond like this. Like you don't even act like this. Like, where's your confidence? Like, what are you
Mm,
like? Why are you responding that way? Why are you so broken? At least
yeah.
that's how I felt. And so I had to start changing my own narrative and not allowing that one situation to define who I was as a leader. Even with knowing, it was a challenge and it wasn't me, but like I said, looking back at it, I'm like, I absolutely had to go through it to be the
Yeah.
person that I am now. And it's actually allowed me to build a better relationship, with the Lord. And I'm still working on that. I like to say, like I've referenced this a couple times, but like PTSD. So there are
Hmm.
times where certain things or certain moments or certain things are said where it will trigger me to
Hmm.
respond the way that I did, you know,
Hmm.
from going through that. But I've just told myself now, like those days are over. I'm going back to the Christy who was, strong, who was confident,
Hmm.
who was a servant, who was, helpful, who,
Hmm.
just, I don't know, just trying to be her best self. And so those affirmations are what have allowed me to get back to that person. So whether it was a scripture that I turned into an affirmation, whether it was something that I just told myself that I knew in my mind or that Satan rather, may have been telling me, and I would try to tell
Hmm.
myself, the opposite,
Hmm.
or I would find myself quoting scripture and reminding God of what he said,
Yeah.
because that's what he tells us to do. So
Hmm.
I'm reminding him of what he said, like, Lord, you said this now. This is what's happening. So
Yeah.
I don't want to feel this way. And
Yeah.
so um that's where the affirmations came from just saying that I'm not that person, and I'm not gonna be that person. I'm not gonna let
Hmm.
you make me that person. That statement that I made after I was speaking on, I think it was our last segment about trust and how I got to
Hmm.
the point of like finding something that reaffirms you and that you take your decisions through, you decipher your decisions through. That affirming statement, whatever that looks like
Hmm.
for leaders, which is what I've encouraged the current supervisors to do, is for me, it was I am not trying to prove who I am anymore. I'm leading from a place of knowing who I am.
Hmm.
So when these challenges and these decisions come up, I make my decision through that affirming statement. Because if I'm not
Hmm.
proving myself and I know who I am and I'm confident, then I don't have to respond that way. I can
Hmm.
respond in knowing who I am.
Yes.
So that's an affirming statement for me. So I encourage all leaders to find out what that looks like. And Brene Brown is an amazing leader. I mean,
Researcher,
I was about to say, I don't
writer.
even know. She's everything. And there's a book that I actually have for my Respiratory Visionaries Leadership Development Group. We just discussed this last week, and I didn't get a time to speak on it. But Dare to Lead,
Yes.
yeah. And so
Yes.
she talks about her acronym in there, braving trust and all these
Yeah.
other things. But she says in there also about living and leading through your morals or your
Yeah.
value, which goes right along with just affirming yourself and
Yes.
figuring out what that affirmation or inspiration looks like and kind of, going from there. One last thing, when the conversation came up today with the new hire, when I was speaking with Patrice, the clinical educator in the new hire, she had made this statement that for years, and she's been a therapist for about a little over 20 years. She made
Hmm.
the statement that every day before she clocked in, for years, she
Hmm.
would say, "Lord, there is nothing that is going to happen today that you and I cannot handle."
Hmm.
And then she would clock in and go about her day every
Yeah.
day for years. And
Yeah.
so we were pouring into the new hire, letting her know the same thing, like figure out whatever that looks like for you and do so.
Hmm.
So I hope that
Yeah.
answered your question. But yes.
No, it did. But like I think it speaks volumes to how much this self talk is
Mhm.
very real, right? Because
Real.
People say all the time, your perception's your reality. Was like, yeah, it is. Ain't that the truth? It's
Yeah.
so factual. And two things to share. One, recently, I have this wonderful leader that I have had the opportunity to work with.
Mhm,
And the very first thing when we met, I asked her what her goals were,
mhm,
and we wrote them down about I want to say a year after we had that conversation, she achieved the first career goal. One of her goals was to become a manager. She'd been in a supervisor role for many years and she'd done it very well. And part of it was the opportunity just had it presented itself. I was super grateful that it did. But when she asked for it, I was like, wow, this is a fantastic goal. And I remember being super excited for her to have that goal
yeah,
and thinking to myself, how are we going to make this happen? And it did. And it just organically ended up following in that way. But one of the things that I feel that she does very well is she looks at a challenge and I'm going to conquer you. That's basically the attitude she comes in with every day.
yeah,
And that's just who she is. That's her personality. And she does. And we made a list of 7 different things that we needed to address in the teams that she's over. Within 6 months of making that list, she had the chance to like cross every single one of them out. And it felt so good for her and it felt amazing. But, I hope we have the opportunity to interview her. I know that eventually we'll have some amazing female leaders here that we can talk to, but one of the things she'll tell you is that everything she did, it was hard and it
mhm,
was scary. And she was like, oh my gosh, people are not going to want to do this. And we would sit down, we would plan it like, okay, we have to forge forward. Like we have to because we don't have a choice. Like the
yeah,
team needs us to do this because the long term effects, if we don't, will be very bad.
be
And it
very bad.
did. And it yielded out amazing
Mhm,
outcomes. But I was so proud that she stayed in that state of mind of, we will do this because this is for the greater good of the team. This is
yeah,
what the team needs. And we're going to make the hard decisions today so that we can carry the team to tomorrow. And talk about like resiliency to make hard decisions today so you
yeah,
can carry the team into tomorrow because
right,
the team then doesn't look to tomorrow. They're focused in the present time, they're focused in today. But very similar to your situation, I went through something very
mhm,
similar where I built up all these walls and I was like, forget it.
mhm,
I will not be who I authentically am. I am gonna just come in, do my job, get it done, go home, in and out, like very transactional. And it was so against who I am at my core. And I remember finally just being, I can't, like, I forget it. I'm
yeah,
going to be who I am. I will be kind. If people take it as, I'm being a certain kind of way, that's on them. Like, that's not a reflection of me. That is a reflection of themselves and how they choose to perceive me. But I know that my actions are genuine. I know who I am. I know that I have good intentions towards people. And that's just how I'm going to move
yeah,
forward with it. And I started to do that. And it was really hard because there were several things that my flesh wanted to react to. There was a lot of noise in the background that I wanted to be like, but that's not what happened. Like, that's not the
mhm,
truth. Like,
mhm,
I was there and I know what happened and I know all the facts and I want to tell my side of the story. But there was something that stopped me from telling my
mhm,
side, my
mhm,
truth, right? Like,
yeah,
my side of the story on things. And, you go through all those things. We just recently did evaluations, and I was sitting down with my superior. One of the things that I will always carry with me
mhm,
because someone else noticed it, because I committed so much to being me, to
yeah,
not changing despite the situations. She said to me, the thing that I'm most proud of that you've accomplished this last year
mhm,
is you did not compromise or change who you were to
mhm,
get through the hard things.
that's right.
And that to me, that was everything. I don't need a raise, you know? I mean, raises are nice and financial gain is great, but to me, the fact that someone can look at me and know the Melissa you see in this room is the same Melissa that you'll see in that room, that you'll see in the cafeteria, that you see in the hallway, that you
That's
see in
right.
a one-on-one. Like,
Mhm,
I shouldn't be a shapeshifter,
yeah,
I'll adapt the way that I approach people
mhm,
based on what their needs are, and I'll regulate to what their need is in the moment, but I didn't change who I was. And there's a lot of that talk going on right now amongst my team where they're like, "Oh, that's that doesn't sound like her because I've
Mhm.
heard her talk to
Mhm.
so and so, and then I've heard her talk to somebody else, and she talks to them the same way. And they say, like, oh, she'll be respectful of your boundaries. That
Mhm.
doesn't sound like something she'd say. Take it back. But
Because
I
they
think
know you.
yes, and it's the consistency of truly and genuinely being yourself,
That's right.
right? And going back to the core of the conversation, it wasn't until I found my personal definition of resiliency. You know, it is the bounce back, it is the recoil, it is how I recover from those situations,
It
but
is.
it's also remaining true to yourself in
That's
those
right.
situations, right?
Mhm.
Your integrity, your character, and all those core values you hold close to your heart. So I think it's super amazing to think about resiliency in a very personal way and not in the way that other people define for you.
That's right.
I
Right. And it's
I
okay to say too that you don't know at that moment what that looks like,
yes.
and then figure it out and define it, and go from there. But we definitely have to own that
Yeah.
personally and make
And
a
it'll change too,
it
right? Like as you
will
change, as you grow, that
evolve.
definition.
It's gonna change. It's gonna go right along with who you are. Real quick, do you have any actual affirming um statements or a process that you follow or things that you do other than the holding your head down, like more personal?
I do.
Okay.
So I will tell you, I am not a huge fan
Uh-huh.
of having pictures of my children on my desk.
Okay.
I am for the most part, I'm a very private person when it comes to my kids.
Mm,
And, you know, I know as a mom, you might understand kind of
mm,
like this sense of being very protective of them.
yeah.
Uh, but I have exactly one picture
Mm,
in my office
mm.
right under my computer. Like it's
Me
just like
too.
right under my monitor. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so crazy.
One thing.
Yes. Yes,
That's
one. And it's like literally right in front of my monitor, like on the little stand. And that's what I'll look at. And I think that when I feel like I'm starting to not find my center in things, or I feel like, wow, like what a hard day. I don't know that I can do this anymore. I remind myself of why I started. And I think that, you know, when we have more time, I'd love to talk more about why I started and why I keep going. My kids are my everything. I think that they will always drive everything that I do. And I always want them to be proud to be my children.
yeah.
I want them to say that, you know, mommy made them proud. And I want them to know that everything I do will be out of love for what I want for them in their lives and things like that. But on a more personal level, that's really what I do.
Mhm.
I genuinely just sit there and I have to. I want to say that when I was a very, very young leader, I had this strong desire to feel like things were fair. And I would often go to people that I knew would feed that sense of that, yeah, that was unfair what happened to you. And
Mhm.
then over time, my circle became really, really, really small. And I learned to truly rely, I don't want to say on myself because I'm not relying on myself. I share
Yeah.
in the same faith as you do. Like I lean on my faith and I pray and I talk to
Mhm.
God and I have those conversations. But going back to what you said about sovereignty
Mhm.
is I know that I'm not in control of what's going to happen. I'm going
Yeah.
to sit here for a second and I'm not going to allow myself to get lost in things that will pass. And that is a hard pill to
Right.
swallow to tell
It is.
myself, this too shall pass. Will it though? Will
Mhm.
it? Because these 15 minutes are feeling exceptionally long right now. And
Mhm.
I don't like the way this feels. And I really want someone to join me in this terrible moment because what they did wasn't nice. And I need them
Right.
to know it wasn't nice, but it is. It's fun looking at that picture. But I think also reminding myself that this too shall pass.
That's right. It will, and it does every time. Every time.
Yeah.
So we just have
Yeah.
to stick to our routines, stick to praying, stick to whatever that looks like for individuals, and sharing testimonies basically on how we do things, how we get through it. And that's the whole reason for honestly this podcast is to share, to inspire, to, you know, talk about the tough times and the good ones, but how we overcame them, how we became the leaders that we are today, and how we're becoming the leaders that we aspire to be.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
makes a huge difference. Yeah.
Okay. What a great conversation.
Yeah, that was good.
That's good. I'm excited. I look
Oh,
forward to
definitely.
inviting more people into our
Yes,
conversations. I think
yes,
we're gonna
awesome.
have a lot of people that feel it's just gonna be so relatable,
It
you
is.
know? And I think that right now in the time and age that we're in, that's what we need. We need people to know we're a community. We might not know all the faces, we might not know all the ears that are listening and not know
Yeah,
what other people are going through, but I do wholeheartedly believe that we will be able to say things that will allow others to feel very heard,
mhm,
seen, and understood.
yeah, it'll resonate, and if
Gotta unmask those myths.
that's right, and whoever this audience is, if they could just get one gem, one,
Mhm.
then I think our job is done.
I think so too. Christy, it's always a pleasure.
Yes, same here, Melissa. For sure.